Rodney, let's get to Mid-South Wrestling. I think it was 278. We actually have, I'm going to be honest with you, we can't find episode 278. I don't know if that episode disappeared somewhere or, but I couldn't find it. I don't think Jack could. I don't think any of us could find it. It may be available on the WWE Network, but here's the, let me put this big so people can see this. Here is the actual, as you see, it was January 2nd, 1985. It's show 278. You see the stuff on the side. This was the one that was actually used. You see Carl Fergie refereeing one match. Pee Wee was on it. Ronnie West with two of the matches there. Pee Wee. Evidently, Pee Wee didn't want him to do twos because they changed it. Fergie went to the other one, and Fergie did another match. But that's the thing. So, Rodney, you want to go over this?
All right, well, we start off with Bill Watts and Boyd Pierce, one of my favorites of all time. They were talking about Christmas night in New Orleans. The Rock and Roll Express regained the Mid-South Tag Team Championship from Ted DiBiase and Sheik Hercules Hernandez. Skander Akbar is protesting. Akbar was not there that night and claims foul. But the Rock and Roll Express are the new Mid-South Tag Team Champions. And then, of course, they had the video of the Rock and Roll Express. And then they're back. Mid-South Wrestling now is going to bar Steve Dr. Death's helmet, finally, after all those months. Any violation will subject him to a fine and other penalties. 2 weeks ago, Iceman King Carson was here on TV. His bout with Kamala, and, of course, they talked about Akbar. And so it angered him that now the Iceman King Parsons is now moving to the Mid-South. Let's go back just for a minute over that helmet thing. You would have thought they would have took care of that a long time ago. And while they were at it, take care of Ted DiBiase's glove. But, that's just me. It's good for the helmet, but not for the glove. Makes no sense to me.
I'm ready for it. Well, I'm hearing myself for some reason. Here's they're going to outlaw this thing as well, the little mallet. Well, do you think they'd outlaw that?
Well, if it's being used illegally, I would think so. It would make sense if you're going to bar one thing, you need to bar several.
I never understood the. I'm sorry. Did y'all ever understand the Dr. Death Awards?
The only thing I understand it for was him putting it up on the ring, up on the corner for him to use. That's the only thing.
I'd rather have had my mallet here. I never have understood that. And why they thought that was going to be entertaining whatsoever. I guess they wanted to give him a gimmick to use, but still, that was kind of crazy.
Yeah. First match, we'll have the Iceman King Parsons. He's one of my favorites. I have to go back to that interview we saw a couple of weeks ago where he says he's going to pack up and come. Just tremendous interview. Iceman Parsons, always great. He's facing another good one, Rick Oliver, in a great match. And, of course, Iceman goes over in that one. Then we come back with an interview with Chavo and Hector Guerrero about the Rock and Roll Express and, of course, challenging them as the new Mid-South Tag Team Champions. We go back to the ring. It's Tim Horner and Shawn Michaels facing Chavo and Hector Guerrero. And again, ladies and gentlemen, we haven't seen this, so we will assume that Chavo and Hector Guerrero is the winner in that one. We're just guessing. We're just guessing, of course. I'm just going to – I think it's a good guess. I think it's a very good guess that Tim Horner and Shawn Michaels did not defeat the Guerreros, being they just talked about the Rock and Roll earlier. And then in our next match is for the Mid-South Television Championship is Buddy Landel, the Mid-South Television Champion, defending against Terry Taylor, and Terry Taylor regains the Mid-South Television Championship. Then we go to the tag match. I have to scoot down here on my computer here. It is a tag match. It's Ted DiBiase and Steve Dr. Death Williams versus Hacksaw Jim Duggan and Private Terry Daniels. I'd like to have seen that one. I believe that would have been a good one. The people were should be on fire. I have seen video of 279. I'm assuming that was filmed the same night. The crowd was kind of off. I'm assuming bad weather in Shreveport that night. Because even on the front row during that particular one, people were still in their jackets. And so it must have been cold in the old.
Or they heard Private Terry Daniels is on the card.
Well, that could be true. Anyway.
I get cold every time I hear his name.
I'll tell you right now. Then we have the next match is Brad Armstrong versus the Sheik, Hercules Hernandez. He did not lose the title, but I would assume maybe a time limit draw. They have one in the next show as well. Diamond is David Diamond against the Ugandan warrior Kamala, or Ugandan giant, whichever you prefer. Rocky King against Jake the Snake Roberts. And next week, we'll have a special award to Jim Duggan. Brad Armstrong defends the North American title against Steve Dr. Death Williams. And that ends show number 278.
When we look back at 1984, let me ask y'all. We went through the whole shows. We did some of them were built with Bill Dundee at the beginning. Did it kind of slide down a little bit when Midnight Express left?
Well, that was something I was thinking about when I was watching the shows this past weekend. Cornette and the Midnight Express is something you simply can't follow. They just cannot. They're just that good. Akbar is fine, but when you put Akbar and the way he does things against Cornette, there's no comparison. Cornette has the tennis racket tennis. He has the storyline where his mother is funding everything, and then Cornette's actually obnoxious, unlike Akbar. And Cornette played his part to the T. And then you have the experience of Bobby and Dennis. Just a tremendous team. I went back and you think about, you watched the shows from the year prior, even the build-up with the Midnight Express. It's nothing because it's nothing compared to what they're doing now. Honestly, we've already seen Ted DiBiase. What really more can you do with Ted DiBiase in Mid-South? I love Ted DiBiase. He was great. He would have been better off staying with Jim Crockett Promotions and being groomed to be world champion instead of being down there in Mid-South. He really would have, as far as I'm concerned. We've already seen Kamala. We've already seen these people. Basically, what their problem is that they were all using old hats. Whereas Cornette, Midnight Express, Dennis, and Bobby were all new, never had been seen there before. That's the difference, in my opinion. Did I talk too much? I'm sorry.
Jack, what did you think?
Oh, I agree. It just, if you look at it for me as purely a fan perspective, it's hard to follow Jim Cornette and the Express and the Rock and Roll Express for that matter too. There was so much excitement there, but it seems like every time they tried to come in with something after those guys were gone, like with the Fantastics and the Pretty Young Things, all that, if they didn't get over what Bill felt like immediately, they only lasted a few weeks and they were gone. So we didn't have an opportunity for new blood to come in there and start exciting people. Instead, he started bringing the older guys back. They had been there before, and the older guys were not that old at the time, but they had been there for so long. And now you're bringing them back again, and it was just, it was like beating a dead horse. Now the horse probably still looked good, but it wasn't moving.
Now, you missed the rivalry between the Rock and Roll Express and Midnight Express. And you also had that great story, the great storyline between Wrestling 2 and TA that was going on at the same time. And that was something, that long-term building is something that was thrown out the window for whatever reason.
Yeah. I mean, we have nothing whatsoever building up Brad Armstrong. They just bring him in, they stick the belt on him, but they don't do nothing with him. You got young guys like Tim Horner there that should have been pushed, to the top and see what he could do. And I think he would have succeeded because Tim's one of the great workers that don't get mentioned a lot, unfortunately. But there was so much young talent there, but he just didn't want to take the time to build those. He wanted to go back, and bring in the guys who had existing storylines basically, or, the characters were built instead of building new ones.
And it leads to the big, we'll be talking about it coming up. We're going to go into the sharp dressed man matches. I will tell you that the Superdome that through the previous year's Superdome did 25,000. The Superdome with Jim Duggan and Ted DiBiase on the main event, 9,500 people. There is a major difference, and that's because they went with DiBiase and Duggan, old hat from 1982, and doing it one more time.
Yeah, it just, to me, it was just, I just, when I go back and look, I'm thinking when we look back at 1984 and we look at the Midnight Express, we look at the Butch Reed and Buddy Landell as a tag team, and at the beginning with the Junkyard Dog, and really even the stuff with Master G. Even though it didn't make any sense when he came out and they didn't know who he was. I mean, that didn't make any sense. But I don't see this. And we know that Chavo and Hector do not have the matches with the Rock and Roll Express.
No.
Really, they had no chemistry together whatsoever. Just was not good matches at all. They didn't have the matches even that they would have with Ted DiBiase and Steve Williams. Now, they had some great matches later on, but it takes a while to get there. But next week, we have found number 279.
Yes, we have found it. And
we can watch that.
boy, do I have a lot to say about the Brad Armstrong and Steve Williams match. I will burn it all. The internet will melt down when I get finished.
Let's just go ahead and do this. Rodney.
Might put a disclaimer. This thing's going to be hot with Brad Armstrong and Steve Williams.
That'll be on the next
I will not be kind to Jim Ross or Joel Watts, either one.
Well, that will be on the next episode. Mid-South Wrestling will be looking at episode 279, and we'll see you on the next episode on Mid-South Wrestling. All right.